So people were really upset yesterday about the fact that I critiqued Stephen Fry's video, so I'm going to explain this to you as if you're 5 years old. Campaign Against Anti-Semitism, the people that sponsored and created the video with Stephen Fry, were created in 2014 in response to Israel's bombardment and massacre of Gazan civilians, because they felt like the British media were critiquing Israel too much and holding them to impossible standards. This is again whilst they were carpet bombing and destroying civilians in Gaza. They accused British media of help to feed the oldest hatred through critiquing Israel and the fact that they were bombing the shit out of civilians. Oh my god, we've been here before. They created this group as a zero tolerance for against anti-Semitism, with the group being formed against pro-Palestinian protesters and the fact that pro-Palestinian protesters chanted anti-Semitic slogans. But given the fact that they think From the River to the Sea is anti-Semitic, the group was founded to further Israeli interests in British media, because British media were critiquing Israel's bombardment of civilians. Mint Press published after his video came out that this was funded by a Zionist youth group that funnels members into the Israeli military. They are members of the Zionist youth group, I can't pronounce that, which runs pre-military programs to enroll members in the Israeli occupation forces. The same forces that kill and bombard and incarcerate people in both the West Bank and Gaza. They have spoken at events for the Israel Lobby Group and the Jewish Leadership Group. Stephen Fry signed a video defending the ongoing bombardment around the 20th of October. Already thousands of Palestinian civilians had died. He is also part of the Actors for Peace initiative, the Creative Community for Peace. It was an open letter defending the Israeli regime and describing obviously the Hamas attacks as evil. He was one of hundreds of celebrities that signed the open letter, but the open letter was basically just saying, oh, we support Israel and what they're doing. They have the right to defend themselves, quote unquote, as they literally were killing children. The appeal has nothing to do with peace, nor does it reflect the view of those genuinely torn and confused by this event. As this article states, the letter was pure propaganda because it situates the nightmare that Israelis have feared for decades became reality, rather than centering the ongoing occupation that has happened for several decades. And again, to quote the UN, this violence did not exist in a vacuum. Israel have continuously violated the pre-1967 borders. If you want to witness a world without Hamas and you want Hamas out, look to the West Bank where Hamas isn't and people are still being murdered by occupation forces and incarcerated and embargoed. Israel is the problem. Which brings me to my third point, that Israeli ministers are sharing his video on Twitter. The same Israeli ministers that are advocating for the complete destruction of Gaza and that it should be a car park and that they deserve to have settlements there and houses there. And if I was being really naive and I was just ignoring all of the previous connections to Israel, the fact that his words and his video are being reshared and advocated by the literal government of Israel, that means that there's something in his message that they agree with. Which brings me to the video.
It seems to have woken up of late. The horrendous events of October the 7th and the Israeli response seem to have stirred up this ancient hatred. It's agonizing to see all the violence and destruction that's unfolding and the terrible loss of life on both sides.
To classify the deaths of 20,000 civilians and the ongoing displacement and ethnic cleansing of Palestinians, around 90% of the population now has been displaced, as the Israeli response is insane paraphrasing. Again, to talk about this ongoing bombardment of civilians as if it's two armies fighting one another, as if they have mutual aid and mutual backing and mutual military prowess, as if one side doesn't have the nuclear bomb and isn't dropping 200 tons worth of bombs on Gaza every week, as if this hasn't been the highest death count, according to the UN, of children in recent war, is just, again, horrific paraphrasing. And to say that the Israeli response has awoken this old beast of anti-Semitism implicitly implies that you cannot critique Israel foreign policy. And this fits Israeli narrative because Benjamin Netanyahu says, you can't investigate me for war crimes, that's anti-Semitic. So he is saying these same things that Benjamin Netanyahu is saying as well. Investigating me or critiquing Israel is anti-Semitic. So again, it is a pro-Israeli lobby group that sponsored the video. Campaign for Anti-Semitism arose because of the 2014 bombardment of Gaza, where they felt like Britain were holding Israel to impossible standards and they didn't like the way that people were siding with Palestine. That is how that group was funded and founded. And they've now created a video where they're like, oh my god, you're being anti-Semitic, you're critiquing Israel for killing the shit out of civilians. It's the same shit. And whilst it would be great to have a conversation about British anti-Semitism, it seems tactical to not discuss the fact that Britain sells arms to Israel and that Britain gave Israel the green light to continue to siege Gaza. Benjamin Netanyahu is currently shopping around to see if anyone will voluntarily migrate all of the Gazan population. To define that as just Israelis' response, as if it's not a fucking war crime, is insane to me. And when you look at who has funded the video and who is sharing the video and who created the video, you begin to see how it's complicit. You cannot equivocate October 7th with the ongoing bombardment of Palestinians. They're not equivocal. They're not equivalent. Did 20,000 Israelis die on October 7th? No. Has the ongoing occupation of Palestine and Gaza been happening for decades? Yes. You can't compare it. And to imply that it's a both sides issue is insane. So no one hates him because he's Jewish. They hate the fact that he is advocating for a regime that is killing civilians. And he refers to this killing of civilians as just a response, as if it's the fucking weather. And he equates the smashing of storefronts and the drawing of swastikas, which in and of itself is awful, but that's not the bombardment of a civilian population. That is not the ongoing siege of Gaza. That is not Benjamin Netanyahu literally saying he wants to displace all of Gaza. They're not the same. And to say that they are the same is wrong. I'm sorry.